Hey everybody, yes, we're back with another episode of the FilmBrony podcast, and very unusual since we usually do it like monthly. But because we have a special episode we're going to be doing today, I thought we'd be doing the episode today. So welcome everyone to episode 28 of the FilmBrony podcast. I am of course the guy who's in charge of doing the podcast, um broadcasting the podcast here in the Canino, and as always. I have a guest with me who's also like created the Film Brony podcast. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, the good news is, compared to last episode, I got myself a new laptop. So now I can film in my own bedroom again.
And I got myself a new laptop too. So yeah,
So let's just begin.
yeah. And welcome Rainwright to the podcast. And again, I'm sorry about last week. I let my anger get the best of me, and I just it was it was
Yeah.
it was just too much, especially after what the Brony fandom did to me.
Yeah.
But let's just not worry about that and just get on with the usual.
All right. So since it's been a week since the last podcast, I only got a handful of Blu-rays. In fact, here they are right now. So 10 things I hate about you.
That's a good one.
A hidden life.
That's a good one too.
James and the Giant Peach.
Nice,
The Little Prince.
nice.
The Old Man and the Gun.
That's a great film.
And Purple Rain.
Nice. I only got two Blu-rays. I only got two Blu-rays with me, and two of them are critically acclaimed hits, and I adored both of them. First up is my favorite film from Paul Thomas Anderson, There Will Be Blood.
You know what? I think that and No Country should have probably tied for Best Picture.
They should have. I agree with you on that. As much as I had No Country for All Men as number one and There Will Be Blood as number two, I can't help but have them both tied as like being number one in my book of 2007, just because they're that damn great. And then my number two film of 2016, La La Land.
That was my number three that year.
Nice. All right. We got a movie review we're going to be talking about, and then we're going to get on to the usual the the usual episode, the special episode you guys have been waiting for. And the only movie we're going to be talking about on today's podcast is probably one of the most controversial and divisive movies of the year so far.
Yeah, it's pretty much so divisive that Nick and I are on polar opposites of opinions. So, as of usual, I'll go first. Thor: Love and Thunder. For me, it seems like Memory has been dethroned as the most underrated film of the year. However, I don't think this is quite as masterful as Ragnarok, as I found one or two plot points that don't really add up, particularly a certain aspect about involving Jane and the hammer. Plus, I kind of wish it was longer to flesh out the worlds as they go through, as well as fleshing out the character of Gore as a villain. Also, don't expect the Guardians to be here long. They're just in the opening scene, and that's it. However, I personally found it to be an immersively funny and entertaining experience. The cast is as charismatic as ever, with Christian Bale and Russell Crowe being worthy additions. The action is entertaining, the soundtrack is rocking, and Taika Waititi's vision is just as creative and colorful as ever. I'm sure everyone has seen this movie already, but if you haven't, just go out and do so already. I'll give it the seal of approval.
This is sadly the very first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that I absolutely hated. I didn't think it would be possible, but they managed to make a movie that I hate, that I really hated, and managed to be worse than the overrated Ant Man and the Wasp. I don't know how that's possible, but when you have a movie that is just basically one joke throughout the entire film, where it's just basically like, look at Thor, look at Thor being stupid. Aren't we so clever? Aren't we so clever? No, you're not clever. If you're doing it, if you're doing one joke just for the sake of dragging it over and over and over again. I was also very disappointed with how half-assed the half-assed and sloppy the CGI visual effects were in that film. Evidently, there were like reports of like the studios like rushing the visual effects artists to like get this film visual effects artists to like this complete this in time for the film's release, and honestly, it shows. It shows with this one.
Honestly, this just shows that Marvel is cares more about quantity than quality nowadays.
And that's really unfortunate. It's just this is another reason why Phase Four has not been a good one for me. I mean, like I said, Shang-Chi and Spider-Man: No Way Home were the only great ones from that phase that I really loved. Everything else I just did not care for. I mean, Black Widow I originally liked, but now after thinking about it more and more, I'm just not a fan of Black Widow, and I'm definitely lowering it down to a 5.5 out of 10 or a C plus.
Even though I like Black Widow, it does seem rather pointless seeing how she's dead and everything.
Yeah, really. And Eternals, I'm gonna say right now, I do not think it's the worst. I do not think it's the worst of the Marvel movies, but it is not a good film at all. Um, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was good, but not great. But
It's
Thor,
really it's really saying something that they announced that Phase Four has been shortened to end with Black Panther 2.
yeah, how ironic. And I still have a lot of concerns from that. And and right now they made a movie that I absolutely hated, Thor: Love and Thunder. Granted, I will say this: the acting is very good. Chris Hemsworth was great as Thor as always. Natalie Portman was great too. Russell Crowe and Christian Bale were great additions to the film, especially Christian Bale. He was actually pretty menacing as like the villain character. He was great, and the soundtrack kicked ass. The cinematography was very good, and the action sequences were a lot of fun to watch. But other than that, this movie was not good. I'm sorry, but Thor: Love and Thunder is now my new least favorite movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'd rather watch Iron Man 2, Eternals, Ant-Man the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Black Widow, and
Thor: Love and Thor: The Dark World.
Thor the Dark World in a loop than sit through 5 minutes of Thor: Love and Thunder ever again. I have not felt this disappointed at a blockbuster movie since I know I keep saying this many times, but The Rise of Skywalker.
You
I know.
know, you could say Jurassic World defecation.
Well, then again, I wasn't looking forward to that film.
Yeah, fair
Still.
point.
Still, Taika Waititi, I love you, man. But what the hell happened? You redeemed Thor with Thor Ragnarok, and then you made one of the best movies of 2019, which was Jojo Rabbit. What happened?
Apparently, he wasn't even one of the writers of Thor Ragnarok.
I even still, he should have known better. He should have known better than to make a movie where it's just basically one joke stretched out through like almost 2 goddamn hours. Just like look at Thor. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Aren't we so clever? Give me a fucking break. You know, and I love Taika Waititi. I love him very much, but he really dropped the ball on this one. And yeah, he was good in Free Guy. He was funny in that film. I agree. Um, hello, Michael, and Jose. Welcome to the podcast. As always. But yeah, overall, I'm done talking about this film. It just dethroned Men as the most disappointing film I've seen this year so far. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna give. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna give. I'm gonna give Thor: Love and Thunder, or as I like to call it, Thor: Hate and Thunder, a 3 out of 10, or a D plus.
We'll just have to be cautious with Marvel from now on. I mean, Black Panther 2 looks okay, but seems rather pointless due to obvious reasons. Guardians 3 is actually looks promising. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man 3 I hope is better since it's from one of the writers of Rick and Morty.
I'm not looking forward to that one, honestly.
And I bet Mahershala Ali will kill it as Blade, but again, it kind of seems rather pointless since we already have the first two Wesley Snipes movies. Fantastic Four, we'll just have to see since we haven't gotten a cast or director yet.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that I'm just hoping that it's at least good. It's at least better than the Tim Story films, which I didn't think the Tim Story films were all that bad. They were flawed, sure, but compared to the 2015 Abomination, I would rather watch those films than the Josh Trank film ever again. Or and I know it wasn't his fault. It was the studio's fault. It was the studio's fault. I would rather watch. Let me rephrase what I just said. I would rather watch the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies than watch Fan Four Stick ever again.
Yeah. Anyways, with all that said,
please don't mess this up, Marvel. Please.
Yeah. Let's just move on to the main event.
You guys knew what you were here for, and we're not going to break any promises here. This is it. The 10 worst and best movies that Soren and I saw this year so far. Now, keep in mind, Soren and I didn't see a lot of films that are either on a lot of people's worst stuff or best stuff list. I myself didn't see The Man from Toronto. I didn't see Deep Water. I especially avoided 365 days. This day, like the plague, and that Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, like the plague as well.
Yeah, I know Austin Putnam especially hated the Texas Chainsaw sequel.
Yeah, and originally I was planning to review Petite Maman and you and You'll Never Be Alone, or whatever it's called, but unfortunately I don't have enough time to review those movies, so don't expect them on my best of list. And for those of you who were expecting the worst person in the world to be on the list as well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but it was released in selected areas in 2021, in late 2021, before it got a 2022 release. So don't expect that to be on the list either. But same rules apply as always. Same rules apply as our previous worst and best of list. These are just our personal opinions on what we feel are the worst and best movies that we both saw this year so far. If you disagree with the choices, that's okay. Like I said, there's always the comment section on there's always the comment section to determine what your 10 worst and best films of the year are that you saw this year are. And like the previous videos, this is what we're going to go by: 10th worst, 10th best, 9th worst, 9th best, and so on. All right, so enough chit chat. Let's just dive right into the 10 worst and best movies that Soren and I saw this year this year so far. I only have like I only have like two dishonorable mentions, just two.
I only have three myself, and all of them are overhyped Disney movies. Now, these aren't horrible per se, as all of them have some good elements to look fondly on, but as overall products, they somewhat fell short. First, we have Lightyear, which tried to be this epic movie that inspired inspired Andy to become a Buzz Lightyear fan, but I highly doubt it, as it doesn't even stand up with the other great sci-fi films out there.
It was good, but not great.
Next up, I'm sorry, Nick, but I didn't like this movie, Turning Red. I get what the director was doing in terms of exploring puberty and identity, but it was just ruined by some weak writing and one of the worst characters to ever curse a Pixar movie. And last but least, the Roger Rabbit wannabe itself, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
Um, I have okay, so I have two dishonorable mentions as I stated before. My first one is Sundown, starring Tim Roth. Now, the acting is actually very good, especially from Tim Roth, who's actually very good in the film. And the acting was the rest of the acting was fantastic too. The cinematography was great. It's nicely paced for a movie under 80 minutes. But here's the biggest problem I have with the film. Why the hell would you make a movie where Tim Roth's character, like after the news of his wife's mother passing away, all of a sudden, all of a sudden, fates pretends that he forgot his passport when they were supposed to get on the airplane, and then abandons his family just to go on the beach, just to go and relax on the beach. Like, why the hell would you do that? That is bad character writing if I've ever seen one. If I've ever seen one before. And my last dishonorable mention is a Mark Wahlberg is the film starring Mark Wahlberg called Father Stu. I don't hate this movie, but I get um I don't hate this movie. Like I said, I'm not a fan of like faith-based movies, but that's not the reason why I don't like this movie. My main problem was that it felt more like a made-for-TV movie than it is a theatrical movie. And also another problem too on why I didn't like this movie. How many times have we seen movies involving like the story of redemption? How many times have we seen that before?
Too many.
Yeah, really. It's not terrible per se. I mean, I do applaud Mark Wahlberg for trying to get this made, and the acting is very good too. The cinematography is great. The soundtrack is very good, and it's nicely directed. But the film comes up as being a made-for-TV movie, and as a result, it just took away these. It just made it into just an underwhelming mess of a film. Again, not a terrible movie, but just not a good one. And then as for the best with the honorable mentions, let me just pull out my letterboxd account since I have
I'll just go over my three then. I have Happening, a hard to watch yet powerful depiction of abortion, the Bob's Burgers movie, a hell of a treat for both fans and moviegoers, and one of the more underrated films of the year, Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
fuck
Yes,
yes,
I know.
fuck yes. Um, okay, so I have 10 honorable mentions. Soren mentioned this. My most underrated film of the year, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the Bob's Burgers movie, the Adam Sandler flick Hustle, Down Abbey: A New Era, The Duke, um, The Duke, The Phantom of the Open, The Outfit, Jackass Forever, The Black Phone, and finally, The Unbearable Massive Weight of Talent.
All right. As always, on to the top 10.
All right.
Now, now in terms of my top 10 worst, I didn't see that many horrible movies so far this year.
Neither have I.
So these first few, so these first, so the first few I'm gonna talk about aren't necessarily awful, just mediocre enough to round out the list. But that said, my number 10 from the director of Shakespeare in Lonesome, Operation Mincemeat.
I did
I
not
already,
like that. I did not like that movie.
I already explained in the last video why I didn't like this movie, but to keep it brief, it does seem like an interesting true story to tell, but I feel like you can pretty much get as much out of it if you just looked at the Wikipedia article. There's not re- there's nothing really that interesting in terms of plot, story, and characters, and thus no reason to see this. If there's anything I find more frustrating than a horrible movie with so much to bash on, it's these low tier Oscar bait movies that have almost nothing to offer. So number 10 is Operation Mincemeat. Not awful, but not a good way to kick off the worst list.
All right. My number 10 worst is one of those sequels you'll see on the list. A lot of on this podcast. Number 10 is the second sequel of Number 10 is the second sequel of this particular franchise. I enjoyed the first film a lot. I hated the second film. This one I managed to hate even as much as the second film. Number 10 is Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore.
Like I said, I'm not really a Harry Potter guy, but I already knew this was gonna flop.
After the disappointing Crimes of Grindelwald, I was really hoping that The Secrets of Dumbledore would redeem the franchise, given how much I really enjoyed the first Fantastic Beasts movie. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The Secrets of Dumbledore is one of the most boring and frustrating films I've seen this entire year so far. Since this is one of those movies that where it clearly had does not know what it wanted to be due to the film's story throwing too many subplots and the script throwing too many characters that feel underdeveloped, and it left me very underwhelmed and frustrated as a result of this. I guess the only positives I have with the film were that, like the last two movies, the film is very well acted. Eddie Redmayne, Dan Fogler, Jessica Williams, and Catherine Waterston all delivered some very good performances in the film. But there were two performances that really stood out to me the most, and those were being Jude Law, who was fantastic as Albus Dumbledore. The way he brings the charm and relatability to his character is the biggest reason. Is nothing short of just amazing, and why his performance works so well in it. And the second being Mads Mikkelsen, who surprised the hell out of me as Gellert Grindelwald. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Johnny Depp, and he did a good job playing that character in the first two movies. But the reason I love Matt Mikkelsen's performance more is because of how he brought menace and intensity to his villain character, and that's the reason why I love this performance just a bit more. James Newton Howard's musical score was very good. The cinematography was fantastic. And the film's visual effects are fantastic too, but that's sadly it. And yeah, exactly. It's not saying much, but still. With that being said, though, although the story was a bit of an improvement over the Crimes of Grindelwald since it's easier to follow, it was nevertheless an inconsistent mess due to the film story. Like I said before, the film story throwing too many subplots, and the script throwing in too many characters that feel underdeveloped. It's clumsily directed. Clumsily directed. The action sequences, I was also very disappointed in. I was very disappointed with how they were edited and how they were like directed. I felt like there were times where I didn't even tell what the hell was even going on, especially with how terrible the editing was. And for a movie that's like 142 minutes long, it's way too long. It felt like it was going on for like 3.5 hours because of how sluggish the pacing was as well. That which was another reason why that film really frustrated me to no end. Oh yeah, thank you for mentioning this. Like what was the point of bringing that political agenda in a movie like this? Like you're gonna have Grindelwald like all of a sudden become this like and his followers become like similarities to like how like the world like views like Trump and others. Look, I hate that sociopathic son of a bitch as well, but keep the political agenda stuff out of movies like this.
And speaking of political agendas, what was the point of having Dumbledore gay?
That made no sense at all. Look, I don't mind movie portraying characters that are gay. I don't mind that at all. But how the Dumbledore character was portrayed in that film, it felt really out of place.
It's like they're trying to make this the next Owl House or something,
Yeah,
witchcraft and all.
yeah, really. And that Owl House is actually a great show.
So I've heard.
Yeah. Overall, after seeing this movie, I don't know how to feel about the future of the Fantastic Beasts movies at this point. The Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore is now tied with The Crimes of Grindelwald as being the worst of the Fantastic Beasts movies I've seen so far, since it completely misses the magic that the Harry Potter movies and even the first Fantastic Beasts movie were well known for, and as a result, this is one of the most boring, inconsistent, and frustrating films I've seen this entire year so far, and that's why it is my number 10 worst movie that I've seen this year so far.
So I ever see that little indie film of Avengers Endgame and saw the scene where Nebula fought against a different version of herself and said, I wish there was a movie just about that. Well, my number 10 is just that, and that is Duel. This movie explores the future of what if you could buy a clone of yourself to let the memory of you go on. Count Gillian gives up a fantastic dual performance as herself and a clone as they have to fight over her life. It's also well directed by Wiley Steens, and it makes you want to check out his other film, Art of Self Defense. So Duel is my number 10 in a great one to kick off the best list.
My number 10 is my number 10. We're going to start out with on my best of list is the movie that has the year's best performance so far, and that is Elvis.
I'll talk about it later.
I really I have not been a fan of Luhrmann. I mean, the only films that I liked from him were was the 1992 flick Strictly Ballroom and Moulin Rouge. Everything else I just did not care for. My problem with Baz Luhrmann is that he relies too much on like style over substance, and that's why films like Romeo and Juliet, as well as Australia
Great Gatsby.
and yeah, thank you. Great Gatsby fell flat for me. Thankfully, Elvis is the return to form for him. Yes, Baz Luhrmann's style is in the film, but it actually served a purpose in it. It actually served a purpose in it, and it did drive the story forward as a result of this too. Also, let's mention Austin Butler as Elvis Presley. He is seriously, he seriously gives out the best performance I have seen this entire year so far as Elvis Presley. Not only does he look like Elvis, but he sounds like Elvis, and he sings like Elvis, and he like performs as Elvis with the way he moves and stuff, and it's just like you. At times, it felt a bit uncanny because of how amazing his performance was. Like holy shit, you're experiencing Elvis Presley again. The sound mixing was fantastic. The production values and costume design was fantastic. I really enjoyed the story throughout. It was well directed, well acted, especially from also Tom Hanks, who was fantastic as Elvis's manager in the film. He is one mean son of a bitch, especially since Tom Parker was known for for being like for pushing Elvis Presley over the edge with some of the things which yeah, like his character is such a mean son of a bitch, but boy did that performance by Tom Hanks work so well.
As if uh, as if the Toy Story Black Friday wheel wasn't sinister enough.
Right, exactly. Um, the soundtrack was amazing. Most of the soundtrack was amazing. The cinematography was fantastic. The 68 combat scene was one of the best scenes I've ever seen filmed this entire year so far. The way they recreated that, like, holy shit. Um, Sometimes being pissed off can be a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, Wainwright.
yeah, really. I will say my only problem I did have with the film is that I wish it was 3 hours long because at times, because there were some times where like the film like it's like skips over some things, including like the relations. Like they showed like little bits of the relationship between Elvis Presley and his wife Priscilla, but they only showed like Elvis cheating. They only showed like Elvis cheating instead of like both of them cheating. Because Priscilla was known for because Priscilla also cheated on Elvis too, which was one of the biggest reasons why he was like which was one of the biggest reasons why he was like why 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 he became overdosed with drugs. So I really wish it was 3 hours long and they could have shown more of the relationship troubles that both were facing. But other than that, I really enjoyed this film. I loved Elvis, and I think it's one of my favorite films I've seen this year so far. And yeah, that's why I put Baz Luhrmann's Elvis as my 10th best movie I've seen this year so far, and this is easily Baz Luhrmann's best movie in years. Yeah, that's why it's number 10.
You know, it's bad when that one fan fiction I did ripped off Fatal Attraction better than the original director did. My number 9 is Adrian Lyne's Deep Water.
Oh, jeez.
I will say that his direction, as well as the performances of Ben Affleck and Anna de Armas, are, while not great, almost make this tolerable to watch. And I say almost because this was such a bore to sit through. This movie took almost a decade to bring to the screen, and it was not worth the wait. Like, at all. There's little to nothing memorable, unique, or interesting for me to recommend this, as you're just better off out watching other Lynn movies again. And Anna de Armas, you're just lucky Blonde is coming out because otherwise I'm gonna remember you for this. So my number 9 worst is Deep Water.
All right, I really was not expecting to like I really was not expecting to put this as like my number 9 worst. But because of how much this director disappointed me with this one, oh, Alex Garland, what happened to you, man? Number 9 is Men.
You'll see it way higher on my
Oh
list.
my god, this was the most disappointing film I saw from like the first 6 months of this year. Before Thor: Love and Thunder dethroned it, this was originally my most disappointing film of the year. While the film is well acted and it has a few tension-filled moments here and there, Men is sadly a pretentious mess that had no idea what it wanted to be, and as a result, this is one of those films where it not only just becomes nothing more than a waste of time, but you're left feeling extremely confused on what you just witnessed and what Alex Garland was even trying to go for with this, while also asking these questions. Did it want to be a slow burn horror movie while also being an allegory on men and misogyny, or did it want to be a grotesque body horror film? We don't know because the movie never even bothers to decide what it wants to be at all. The only positives I have with the film were that the acting was absolutely terrific. Jessie Buckley was terrific as Harper Marlowe. She was absolutely phenomenal in the film, and easily one of her better performances she's given on in her career. Yes, it did go down to from a 4 to 3 ring, right? Unfortunately, Rory Keener was also fantastic as the men he portrayed in the movie. I also found the musical score to be haunting and mesmerizing. The cinematography is beautiful, and it does have some tension-filled moments here and there that did have me on the edge of my seat for some part. Unfortunately, everything else is terrible. Everything else was not good. The story was an inconsistent mess. It was the script was the script was also a disjointed mess since I was very disappointed with Alex Garland. With I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Um, I was also very disappointed with not only not only how much of a misguided mess Alex Garland's direction was, but how messy the script was as well, due to it having clunky dialogue and terrible character development. The editing was also a clumsy mess, and not only was the film's pacing a sluggish mess as well, but there are two glaring issues that I had with the film. I already explained it in full detail. So I'll give a brief glimpse of it. But the first being that, look, this movie could have been a good message about. This movie could have had a good message about toxic masculinity. But when you have a movie that repeats that that same old agenda where it's saying, "Oh, men suck, men are pigs, all men are evil," over and over and over again, then not only does the message fall flat, but the story as well as the whole film. Now, granted, it's not as bad as how Black Christmas did it. That's worse. But again, that doesn't excuse men for like how it did it. And the ending, oh my god, the ending was horrendous. Just it was just awful. I I already explained in full details how bad the ending was, so I don't need to say it again. I don't need to say it again on here. But it just did not make any sense at all. Yeah, wants her love my ass. Yeah, it's just and because of that, this makes the whole story feel extremely pointless and a complete waste of time. Yes, so overall, yes, the film is well acted and it has some tension film moments here and there. But Men is sadly Alex Garland's worst movie he's made so far, since it's a pretentious mess that had no idea what it wanted to be. And as a result, this is one of the most misguided, inconsistent, and boring films I've seen this entire year so far. And this is also up there with Spring Breakers and How to Talk to Girls at Parties as being one of the worst movies that, sadly, one of my favorite independent film studios working today, A24, has distributed. This is sadly one of their worst movies. So yeah, that's why Men is my number 9 worst. Alex Garland, I love you, man, but please try harder next time.
We know we had this trend of comedy biopics showcasing the worst of the worst. We had Florence Foster Jenkins, which showcased the worst singer ever. We had Edward and Disaster Artist, which had some of the worst filmmakers in existence. And now we have the worst golfer in the world in The Phantom of the Open. Besides the direction and screenplay being both funny and heartfelt, it's got one of Mark Rylance' best performances as a professional golfer unwilling to quit in spite of his reputation. Let me tell you, if this doesn't bring a smile to your face, you're likely dead inside. So my number 9 is Phantom of the Open.
My number 9 on the list is a movie that Soren was not a fan of, but I love this movie. I love this movie, and number 9 is After Yang.
Eh.
Um, After Yang is one of the most visually stunning, mesmerizing, and moving films I've seen this entire year so far. This is one of those movies where I'm going to remember as time goes on, since it moved me due to how brilliantly structured the movie was in its visual storytelling. While Kokonada, the director of the film, also does a fantastic job covering the themes of like family and the exploration of life too. The only small issue I did have with the film was that there were a few times where the aspect ratio changes really felt out of place.
Yeah.
That's the only problem I had with the film. Everything else I absolutely loved. I love I found the story of this movie to be brilliantly structured and engaging. And not only does Kogonada do an excellent job with the way he directed this movie, as well as editing it, but the script he wrote for the film was also excellent due to it having great dialogue and characters that feel fleshed out and real. The acting was fantastic. Colin Farrell gives out such a fantastic performance as Jake Fleming, while Jodie Turner Smith, Justin H. Min, and the actress that the child actress, I don't want to butcher her name, but the child actress that played Mika, as well as Haley Lou Richardson, all deliver some great performances in the film as well. I found the soundtrack to be both haunting and beautiful. The cinematography is absolutely beautiful, and so are the film's amazing visuals. I also found the film to be nicely paced throughout. Yes, the pacing is slow burn, but to me it worked because of how much it fit the tone and atmosphere of the whole film. And it also contains one of the most moving endings I've seen in the movie this entire year so far. So overall, After Yang is one of the most well acted, visually stunning, mesmerizing, and moving films I've seen this year so far, and that's why it is number 9 on my best of list so far.
So you know that one SpongeBob episode where Mr. Krabs digs a guy's grave just to sell this stupid hat and sell it, pretty much defiling his grave for money? Well, Mr. Krabs is Disney, and the grave that defiling is Blue Sky Studios, and the metaphor I'm going with is my
Oh,
number 8, Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. I bet a lot of you are expecting this to be higher due to how notorious it has become, but the truth is that Simon Pegg was the only one to to return for the stinker, and he single-handedly sent this one total annihilation. Other than that, who the hell asked for this? Who seriously, who was clamoring for more of these Ice Age movies, even after the last two movies pretty much destroyed the franchise? The animation and writing is a really low effort, and other than little kids, nobody's gonna be mild. You're just gonna be mildly amused by the adventures they go through. Then again, there are much better movies on Disney Plus you can show your kids instead. And given that Disney just lost the rights to Scratch, I hope they take it as a sign to just end this Mon Line Before Time franchise while they're ahead. So my number 8 worst is Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild.
okay. So my number 8 is a video game movie that came out back in February of this year, and while some might not agree with me on this, and while and while and while some might not agree with me on this, I found Uncharted to be one of the most generic, boring, and forgettable movies I've seen this year so far.
I thought it was okay.
Mm, that's fine. This is one of those movies where it didn't leave an impact on me due to how boring and generic the whole thing was, and how this movie tries way too hard to be like Indiana Jones, especially the first three movies. The only positives I have with the film were that Tom Holland and Sophia Ali were the only actors in the film that did deliver some good performances as Nathan Drake and Chloe Frazier, respectively. The musical score was decent, and not only does the film have good cinematography, but I really enjoyed the action sequences in the film as well. They weren't anything spectacular, but I really enjoyed them due to how a lot of fun they were to watch, especially with how it was choreographed, directed, and shot. Also, there was a nice cameo from Nolan North, which did put a smile on my face. But that's sadly it. The story did have some cool potential, but it was poorly executed due to it being a generic and muddled mess. Muddled mess, I meant to say. And not only was Ruben Fleischer's directing clumsy, but I felt that the script is one of the worst of the year so far due to two glaring issues I have with it. The first being that this movie has some of the worst dialogue I've ever heard in a movie this entire year so far, due to it being clunky and due to how clunky and extremely cheesy it was. And the second, and the second thing that bothered me about the script was that the character development was messy as hell. You don't care about any of the characters in the film since almost all of them feel paper thin and just shallow. The rest of the acting was not good either. Now, I love Mark Wahlberg. He's a very talented actor, and he was fantastic in films like Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights and Martin Scorsese's masterful The Departed and David O. Russell's The Fighter. But in Uncharted, not only is he horribly miscast as Victor Sullivan, but even when he tries to play the character, his performance came off as being shallow due to him just playing Mark Wahlberg himself rather than the character he's playing. And that really fell flat. Not to mention that Antonio Banderas and Tati Gabrielle are horribly wasted in this movie too, due to how poorly written and pretty forgettable their villain characters are too, I should add. It's clumsily edited. The CGI effects look bland and messy. It's poorly paced. It's poorly paced, and it just goes for those cliches that we've seen in other action films before. And since it also felt like nothing more than an Indiana Jones ripoff as well. So overall, despite some good performances by Tom Holland and Sophia Ali and good action sequences, Uncharted is sadly one of the most generic, boring, and forgettable movies I've seen this year so far. Even as a movie based on a video game, or even as an action adventure movie in general, this movie falls flat due to how generic and boring it was. That's why it's number 8.
My number 8 best, Steven Sober saw a woman in the window and said, "You know what? I can make it better. Kimmy." This movie well discusses some of today's more relevant topics like AI and staying indoors, and gives us this sharply directed, intense thrill with a stellar performance by Zoe Kravitz. If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend seeking it out on HBO Max, and it's even on DVD in some stores if you can find it. So my number 8 is Kimmy.
Number 8 is my second favorite animated film of the year, Belle.
That was a good movie.
I love this movie. After seeing Belle, it took me by surprise with how much this one blew me away. Belle is one of the most beautiful, visually stunning, exhilarating, and thought-provoking animated films I've ever seen. Not only not only was this movie an excellent homage to Beauty and the Beast, but this is one of those films that really stuck with me by the time it was over, due to how visually stunning and emotional the whole film was, and it shows why I also love anime as well. If I had to point out one issue I did have with the film, is that I did feel it was a bit too long. Like, I did wish they could have shaved like 12 minutes of the film down, but that's it. The animation is absolutely incredible. Not only was the animation of the real world excellent, but when it came to the virtual world, oh my goodness, the animation in the virtual world, is absolutely breathtaking, especially with its visuals, which I feel are absolutely spellbinding. I love the story. I love the story of the film, since the story had me emotionally invested throughout. It's very well directed. The voice acting was great. The actress that voiced Suzu Nato or Belle, she gave us such a triumphant and incredible vocal performance, because the way she voiced Suzu and brought emotion to her character. It's just nothing short of just triumphant. It also has one of the best soundtracks I've heard in the movie this entire year so far. The editing was great. It's nicely paced throughout. And not only does the movie carry some good humor in it, but good humor in it as well, but the film did an incredible job covering the themes of the internet, cyberbullying, and best of all, identity. And it also contains one of the most beautiful and emotional endings I've ever seen in an animated movie so far. So far, overall, Belle is one of the most visually stunning, beautiful, exhilarating, and thought-provoking animated films I've ever seen, and that's why it's number 8.
As for my number 7 worst, I had to tie these two because 2019 was the year that gave us Toy Story 4 and Avengers Endgame, two of the very best franchise conclusions in cinematic history. Now, imagine those two movies, but done as effortlessly and haphazardly as possible. And next, gonna mention one of them in this top two. My number 7 is a tie between Hotel Transylvania Transformania and Jurassic World Defecation.
Oh my god.
Look, I'm not going to pretend the Hotel Transylvania movies are cinematic landmarks, but they were cute little flicks that tied Adam Sandler's career until the Safdie Brothers' next film. But it's like even Sandler had comedic standards, as he didn't even return for this one. And could you blame him? It's like
Oh,
Sony didn't even see the films they were following up on because this just feels like what people thought the first movie was going to be when they saw the trailer. While the previous movies were both funny and had a surprising amount of depth for a parody of the Universal monsters, this movie was neither. Outside of one joke, the humor just derives on overblown slapstick or stupid running gags that weren't even funny the first time. Hey, we have the same number 7. Anyways, the animation is a severe downgrade, and the story has to rely on the characters being uncharacteristic jerks like Dracula learning the exact same lesson as the first movie, or complete dumbasses like Johnny or the rest of Drac's pals. Top it off with continuity errors galore and a haphazardly rushed ending, and it got a disappointing dive for Sony. Now, as for Jurassic World Defecation, that is a franchise I can safely say start off with a bang and impacted the film industry with its lore, story, and special effects. And after decades of sequels ranging from worthy successors like The Lost World and the first Jurassic World to complete slaps to the face like the second half of Fallen Kingdom, it's safe to say this franchise has run its course. This is a movie that's less concerned about the wow factor and more concerned about how big and nostalgic these movies can go. The effects made me feel nothing. The story is a mess. The characters are unmemorable and boring. And it was the first time that seeing dinosaurs is like, yeah, whatever.
like,
It's,
how is that even possible?
it's apparent that they stood on the soldiers of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as they could. And as a result, people are already starting to forget this even came out. So yeah, that's pretty much why Hotel Transylvania 4 and Jurassic Park 6 are tied as my number 7 worst.
My number 7 worst, I'll be honest. My number 7 worst, I forgot this even came out. Until I looked over the films that I reviewed this year so far. And number 7 is the 355.
You'll see it in my top 3.
This was not a good way to start out 2022 when this was first released back in January this year, because the 355 is one of those movies that could have had a lot of potential with its decent concept. Unfortunately, it's poorly executed. Other than the acting, including the ones from Jessica Chastain, Penelope Cruz, Van Bingbing, Diane Kruger, Lupita Nyong'o, Edgar Ramirez, and Sebastian Stan being good, and the film having a decent musical score composed by Tom Hulkenborg, they unfortunately couldn't save the 355 from being one of the most generic, boring, and forgettable movies I've seen this year so far. Not only was the story an inconsistent and cliched mess, but Simon Kinberg's directing is also a muddled mess too, and so is the script and pacing. And the worst part is that this movie has one of the worst action sequences I've ever seen put to film due to how terrible the editing was, how bland the cinematography was. I mean, how bland the choreography was, and how much of a shaky mess the cinematography was in the film. And worst of all, this movie also throws in a lot of cliches that borrows from better spy movies, including the James Bond movies. I mean, there's a difference between being inspired and then just like copying it just for the sake of it. And the 355 just feels like it was just a carbon copy of the rejected James Bond movies. That's what it felt like. Overall, the 355 is one of the most generic, cliched, forgettable, and boring movies I've seen this year so far, and it's just, yeah, it's my number seven worst.
Yeah, it's pretty safe to say that it did not start the year with a bang.
Nope.
But as for my number seven best, I
That,
don't
you,
really.
you know what? You know what? You know what? Let me do this one more time. How much of a shaky mess it was.
Honestly, your Seeking the Kim is still better than the cinematography of half of today's action films.
Yeah, really.
Well, I don't really know any Elvis songs at the top of my head, so my number seven is Elvis. Baz Luhrmann has always been a director to go above and beyond in his spectacles, except for Australia, which I hear is whatever. And this is no exception. He really puts you in the shoes of the king of pop as he explores the 60s and 70s with stunning visuals and excellent pacing. Austin Butler better win the Oscar for playing Elvis, and Tom Hanks should get as much consideration for making the Toy Story Black Friday reel look heroic. This is everything a great biopic should be and more, which is why it deserves a number seven spot.
My number seven film of this year so far, and excuse me. Hey, Christian.
Hey,
Um, my number seven. I know some will not agree with me, including you, Soren, but Turning Red is my favorite animated film I've seen this year so far.
okay, so for those out there, I don't hate Turning Red, I just don't like it. I will admit that it's way better than half the bad anime films this decade. And can we all just agree that the controversy is complete bullshit?
Don't even get me started on that. Look, even if you didn't like Turning Red, you cannot deny that the controversy over it was complete bullshit.
This movie has nothing to do with 9/11.
Sir, fuck off, Mr. Enner. Yeah. Yes, it's not on the same. It might not be on the same level as some of Pixar's best movies like Toy Story, The Incredibles, Wall-E, Inside Out, or Soul. But that doesn't stop me from saying that Turning Red is one of the most beautifully animated, relatable, and moving films I've seen this entire year so far. It is a movie that does an incredible job tackling the subject of changes and how it affects you when you get as you get older when you're a teenager. And the fact that this movie features a moving story that covers a subject like this, as well as characters that people in real life can relate to, is another reason why I love this movie. I really love this one. I will say my only complaint I did have with the film is that there were a couple jokes that did fall a bit flat, including the twerking panda, which was really unnecessary.
Still
Really,
better than Cuties.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. But the movie, other than that, I loved Turning Red. The animation in Turning Red was absolutely spectacular. It's not hard to see why the director of the film, Domi Shi, stated that she was inspired by anime because its spectacular animation, as well as its color palette they used for the film, felt like I was watching an anime film, despite this being a Western animated film. And the way the backgrounds and characters were designed were absolutely outstanding, and the biggest reason why the animation worked so well in this flick. I was emotionally invested in the story throughout due to how moving and well executed it was. Domishi did an incredible job with not only the way she directed this movie, since you could see the vision and passion she was trying to go for with the film, but she and Julia Cho did a great job with the way they wrote the script of the film. What makes the script work is how well developed and relatable the characters in the film felt, including Mei Mei Lee, who's one of my favorite movie characters I've seen in the movie this entire year so far, I should add, as well as having great dialogue and how it carefully balances the tone between comedy and drama with a sprinkle of fantasy mixed in all together. The voice acting was absolutely terrific. Rosalie Chiang. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but she voiced May in the film, May Lee in the film, and she was excellent. What a great vocal performance she gave out. The way she brought the personality to that character with her vocal performance was absolutely brilliant. Sandra Oh was also fantastic as the voice of May's mother, Ming Lee. The way she brought the energy and personality to her character is what I also absolutely loved about Sandra Oh's vocal performance. The soundtrack was great, and so was the film's editing. I laughed at 93% of the jokes. 93% of the jokes landed for me, and not only was the film nicely paced throughout, but the film also delivers such. Hold on. But the film also delivers such an honest, timely, brilliant, brilliant message about embracing change and finding solutions to problems in mother daughter relationships. Anyone in real life who's ever experienced changes like that will be able to relate to this movie as well as this message. Which brings me to the last thing I absolutely loved about this movie is that how the Mei character who changes into a giant red panda whenever she experiences any strong emotion is a metaphor for puberty. The way that metaphor was handled throughout the whole film is why the themes of changes worked so well in the film for me. That's why it worked. Because you understand what she's going through with this. Granted, I know some might not like that, but to me it worked. Yeah, overall between this and the amazing award-winning short film Bao, I cannot wait to see what Domishi does next. Turning Red is one of the most beautifully animated, relatable, moving films I've seen this year so far, and that's why it's my number 7 best.
My number 6 worst. Judd Apatow, I love you, but what were you thinking? The Bubble. I can see why he just dumped this onto Netflix because it's like he had a neat premise about these actors getting stuck on a film set during the pandemic and did nothing with it. The characters are all unlikable, the comedy falls completely flat and just relies on all this gross out humor and obvious commentary. Like, I thought his worst would have been This Is 40, which is okay, but this movie proved me wrong. I just hope this is just a fluke, and the next one by Judd Apatow is a million times better. So my number 6 is The Bubble.
Okay, number 6 is 2022's answer to Antebellum. Seriously, why was this made? Alice, aka Antebellum 2.0. Seriously, why the hell was this movie made? I mean, what the hell were they thinking with this? Even despite Kiki Palmer delivering a good performance as the title character and the film having very good cinematography, Alice is one of the most inconsistent and downright reprehensible movies I've seen this entire year. Not only does the movie suffer through the same problem as Antebellum, where its portrayal of slavery was downright reprehensible, especially given the fact that the main character realizes that she's actually in 1973. Like what the fuck?
What's with all these movies taking inspiration from M. Night Shyamalan to Village? That wasn't even a good movie.
No. Yeah, not only that, but the story had no idea what it wanted to be whatsoever because of this. The directing and editing are some of the most inconsistent things I've ever seen in the movie this entire year so far. Not to mention the script is absolutely atrocious due to it having an inconsistent tone, awful dialogue, and terrible character development. It also wastes the talents of Johnny Lee Miller, Common, Gaius Charles, and Alicia Webb because of how terribly written their characters are. The soundtrack is a scrambled mess. The pacing is all over the place. And not only does the movie go for those cliches that we've seen in other films before, and but this also has one of the most underwhelming endings I've ever seen in a movie this entire year so far. How it ended, I was just like, that's it? Really? Yeah, overall, Alice is not just this year's Antebellum, it's also one of the most inconsistent and downright reprehensible films I've seen this year so far, and that's why Alice is number 6. Fuck this movie.
My number six best is the best animated film of the year so far, and it's Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. This is pretty much everything you'd expect from a movie like this. It keeps to the spirit of the original show, but it ups the animation, ups the commentary, but doesn't distract from what the franchise is all about. It's funny, it's raunchy, it's Beavis and Butthead, which is exactly why it's my number six.
My number 6 is the best. My number 6 is the best horror film I've seen this year so far, other than the other film that I saw just last night. But we'll talk about that on the next podcast coming in August. Anyway, number 6 is Ty West's X. X is without a doubt the best slasher film I've seen in years, since this movie was not only one of the most absorbing, gripping, and intriguing films I've seen this year so far, but it's also a wonderful homage to those 1970s and to early 1980s slasher movies such as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Friday the 13th. That's what this movie succeeds at very well at. I guess my only complaint my only gripe I did have with the film is that while I said in my while while the script had great character development, there were a couple characters in it that you already know that they're gonna die. They already know you already know that they're and they're going to die. But other than that, that's really it. I love the story. I love the way the script was written due to it having great dialogue, excellent humor, and excellent character development. Even despite some characters that you know are going to die, but that's besides the point. It was well directed by Ty West. Mia Goth delivers one of my favorite performances I've seen this year so far, as not only Maxine Mitz, but also Pearl as well. The way she portrayed those characters in the film is just nothing short of just amazing. I should also mention that the prosthetic makeup they used to make Goth look like the elderly Pearl was absolutely fantastic. Jenna Ortega and Brittany Snow were also great in this movie too, and Martin Henderson was also both hilarious and great as Wayne Gilroy. I mean, there was not one bad. I mean, all the acting was great. There was not one bad performance I found bad. And what I loved about Martin Henderson in as Wayne Gilroy is the way he brought the personality and humor to his character. That's why the performance worked so well for me. The musical score was fantastic. The cinematography was fantastic as well. The editing was terrific, especially with how it cuts together the images and sounds that play with them, which I absolutely love without a doubt. It's nicely paced throughout, and not only was I impressed by the film's ending, which I should mention, and after seeing that ending, I'm excited to see what happens next with future installments. And not only does the film deliver some intriguing and tension-filled moments here and there, but even though they only appear in the third act, when it came to the kills in the movie, holy moly, they were absolutely a lot of fun to watch. It's gory to the T, but man, isn't it satisfying as hell? It is satisfying as hell. Overall, X is the best slasher movie I've seen in years, and one of the most absorbing, gripping, and intriguing films I've seen this year so far, and that's why it is my number 6 best film of the year so far. Great movie.
You know, A24 has been a hell of a ball the past few years, but what the hell was this movie? My number five worst is Alex Garland's Men. Like, talk about a pretentious bore. It started off strong with this woman going into this creepy mansion in light of her husband's death, but then things started to happen, and I'm like, yeah, but I can understand the polarization already. And I wouldn't mind so much, except there are these scenes that seemed interesting, but they just didn't explore them in favor of this feminist agenda that I didn't feel as bad over the head since Black Christmas 2019, all leading up to an ending that just left me confused and horrified at the same time. Alex Garland, please do something good soon. Otherwise, she'll probably be coming the next M. Night Shyamalan. So yeah, my number five is Men.
And let me just say this really quick about that agenda, because that agenda really pisses me off. Yes, men can be real dicks sometimes, but not all men are pigs, and not all men are evil.
I mean, we're okay.
Yeah, we're not perfect, but again, nobody is. All right, all right. My number five worst. My number five worst. This is a movie that really gave me one of the most unpleasant times I've ever had watching a movie this entire year so far. And like the 355, this also came out in January, except this was even worse than the 355. Number five is The King's Daughter.
I'm so glad I skipped that movie. Looked cheap.
Oh my god. This is one of those movies where I wish this was released either straight to DVD or straight to TV instead of in theaters, because because this is the because this is seriously one of the worst family movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And one of the most and it's also one of the most boring, inconsistent, and reprehensible movies I've seen this year so far. The only redeeming thing in the film was that Kea Scalderio. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that again, but she plays Marie Josephine in the film, and she was actually the only redeeming thing in the film. But she actually gave out a decent performance in the film. But that's it. Everything else is terrible. The story was all over the place. Not only was the story all over the place, but the script is one of the worst of the year due to it having terrible dialogue and terrible character development. Not to mention, I shouldn't be surprised that it was directed by Sean McNamara, the same guy that brought us the infamous Brax movie. But come on, man, do better with your directing. It is absolutely atrocious, since it felt like he had no clear direction with what he's even trying to go for with this. And for a movie that was delayed for 7 years, it definitely shows. The rest of the acting was absolutely terrible. Not only does Pierce Brosnan, who I really like and think he's a really talented actor, give out one of his worst performances as King Louis XIV, but he also has one of the fakest looking wigs I've ever seen in a movie. I already showed you guys what that wig looked like on the last podcast, but man, and if you want to see it for yourself, I recommend googling it up. Like Google The King's Daughter, Pierce Brosnan, and you'll see how fake looking that wig looked. It's that bad. It also wastes the talents of the late William Hurt. Rest in peace, by the way, man. And Rachel Griffiths. The soundtrack is nothing but a dated joke, especially when you have out of place modern day K-pop music playing in the background in a movie that takes place in the 19th century. I should add. Not to mention, the cinematography is nothing but a glossy mess. The editing was all over the place. It's poorly paced. The production values and costume design don't look all that impressive, since they look like something you would find something in a presentation that's located in a theme park. And the biggest glaring issue I have with the film are the CGI effects. Good lord, What were they thinking with this? The CGI effects, I'm not even kidding, are some of the worst I've ever experienced in a movie this entire year so far. Especially since some of them, especially the mermaid, looked like something that came out of an outdated PlayStation 1 game. It's that bad. Yeah, overall, The King's Daughter is one of the worst family movies I've seen in my entire life, and absolutely one of the most boring, inconsistent, and reprehensible movies I've seen this entire year so far. And that's why it is my number five worst film of the year so far, easily.
My number five best is a movie that Jurassic World should take notes from, Top Gun Maverick. The
You know,
first movie
oh yeah, I have that higher on my list, which I'll explain later.
Yeah. The first movie I didn't exactly love as much as a lot of people do, but this movie turns everything up to 11 in terms of characters, story, effects, and flight sequences. It also does what a legacy sequel should do and gives us something new while also reminding us what we loved about the first movie. You all know why it's great, you've all seen it, so number five is Top Gun Maverick.
Number five on the list is the best foreign language film I've seen this year so far, and one of the best depictions of abortion I've ever seen put to film. Happening.
Yeah, I'm planning to take notes.
Seriously. After seeing the film, I was not only impressed with the way they handled the subject, but I was blown away by every single minute of this film. I mean, talk about a powerful movie that came at the right place at the right time, and at the right time, given what's been happening with our world recently, with how our world has been handling abortion. Happening is such a powerful, haunting, riveting, and thought-provoking film that, like Never Really, Sometimes Always, which was one of my favorite films I saw from 2020, does a fantastic job handling the subject of abortion in a realistic, honest, and respectful manner, and features the actress that played Anne. And I'm not gonna butcher her name, but I'll type the actress's name in the description. You don't know who I'm talking about. She plays Anne in the film, and she absolutely delivers one of the most powerful performances I've seen this year so far. What I loved about this acting from her was that you feel the pain and fear that her character is like going through, and that's the biggest reason why her performance is absolutely spectacular. The rest of the acting was great too. I love this. I love the story. I love the way the story was brilliantly executed and how powerful it was. And not only did Audrey Daiwan do an incredible job with the way she directed this movie, but I would argue that the script that she, along with Marcia Romano and Anne Barris wrote, is one of the best of the year so far, since it featured fantastic dialogue and characters that are not only well developed, but also feel like real people, especially Anne. Um, the, the musical score is one of the best and most haunting scores I've heard in the movie this year so far. The cinematography is beautiful. The editing was terrific. I also found the film's pacing to be terrific as well. Yes, yes, it's slow burn, but the reason that worked for me was because of how much it fit the tone, realism, and atmosphere of the whole film, and that's what I really loved, and that's why the pacing worked for me. And what I also loved about this movie was the way it handled, as I stated before, it handled the subject of abortion in a realistic, honest, and respectful manner, while also doing a fantastic job looking at the consequences of making abortion illegal, as well as the pain and punishment that the main character gets herself into, that no women in real life should ever suffer through. And without spoiling what happens, the last 20 minutes of the film had my jaw drop with how intense it was. I will say that it is not an easy film to watch, given its graphic nature of the subject. But otherwise, happening You know what? I'm just gonna come on and say this. Happening is one of the most important films I've ever seen in my life. Yes, it might not be groundbreaking with what it's like, with the way it was filmed and stuff, but its subject matter, its timely subject matter, it's the biggest reason why I feel this is a very important film to watch. This is one of those movies that needs to be seen right away. Um, is absolutely one of the best of the year and one of the most powerful, haunting, riveting, and thought-provoking movies I've seen this year so far. And easily, Happening deserves the number 5 spot.
Packing hot dogs from the road.
My best of was, I should say.
Shaped it. Your protein. You like hot dogs, right? By the way, I think I know what's causing this. You do. It's the plants. They release chemicals. You like hot dogs, don't
What? What? No. What kind of a show are we running here all of a sudden?
I couldn't resist.
Well, you just had to get it out of the way.
Anyways, my number 4 worst. Liam Neeson, I love you, but what are you doing, man? My number 4 is Blacklight. We all remember when you used to when you used to appear in these whole profile movies like Schindler's List, Batman Begins, Gangs of New York, and the Star Wars prequels. But recently, you seem to think you're the next action superstar like Stallone or Schwarzenegger, making these tough old guy movies which range from good films like Taken in Memory to Forgive or slog like Blacklight. And it's like this is the pinnacle of bad Liam Neeson thrillers, from the extremely generic story to the bland characters to some of the worst action scenes of the past few years. It's about time this genre needs to retire so that Neeson can end his career on a high note. So my number 4 worst is Blacklight.
Okay. All right. The 4 zeros I gave this year. Okay. Number 4 was the very first 0 out of 10 I gave in 2022. You already knew this was going to be on the list, and it's on here right away. Number 4 is Roland Emmerich's Schlotster piece, Moonfart.
Where's this my number 3?
Well, let's talk about that right away.
So, we all know that Marvel's movies haven't necessarily been the best as of recently, but for Roland Emmerich to say that they've been ruining the film industry is just idiotic, seeing not how not only has No Way Home, Doctor Strange, and Thor 4 killed it at the box office, but they made more money on their opening weekend than this movie can help across in its entire run. Why? Because it's like you've been making the exact same movie over and over and over again since Independence Day came out back in '96. The characters are all the same, the story's all the same, the effects and action sequences are both cluttered and cheap looking yet somehow boring at the same time, and it always results in a secret ending which will never pay off since it's apparent that we're all sick and tired of this Mickey Mouse bullshit. So yeah, number 3 is Moonfall. Just please stop trying.
Seriously. All right. Okay, so long story short, Moonfart is one of Roland Emmerich's very worst movies I've seen from him. So this is one of the ugliest, dumbest, and most reprehensible and idiotic disaster movies I've ever seen in my entire life. This is one of those movies where it not only turned me into a goddamn vegetable, especially due by the time it was over, due to how idiotic the whole thing was, especially the third act. But it let me feeling dirty and angry, and it also made me feel bad for shitting on Adam McKay's "Don't Look Up," which I already mentioned, which Soren and I mentioned was one of the worst movies that he and I saw last year. seriously. Yes, Holly Berry. Yes, Holly Berry and like Patrick Wilson do their best in the film, but again, their talents are horribly wasted due to how poorly written their characters are, and the rest of the acting is terrible too. And what a waste of Donald Sutherland! What a waste! And the worst performer in the film easily goes to the actor John Bradley who plays the cliched cliche geek character number 5086, aka Casey Houseman. Not only was Casey Houseman one of the extremely annoying and yet since he's yet another cliche geek character from Roland Emmerich's movies that comes up as being a comic relief just for the sake of it, especially with that cringe-worthy scene where he pulls his phone out and take a selfie. Like, what the fuck was that shit? What the fuck was that horse shit? But the best way I would describe his character is that he's nothing more than a Gary Stu. Like, like you're gonna make the geek character all of a sudden a superhero just to save the world from like the AI and the moon like colliding with Earth? Are you kidding me?
I mean, say what you will about Ray Ray Palpatine and Florihart being Mary Sue's. At least they don't pull Deus Ex Machina powers out of their asses just for the plot to stop.
Yeah, and John Bradley's performance was so shallow in this one too. I mean, he tries in the film, but again, it's shallow to the T. It's poorly edited. The cinematography is a shaking mess throughout. The soundtrack is abysmal. The directing is abysmal. The writing is abysmal. Everything is just abysmal. And you know, and again, how the fuck did this cost 140 million to make, yet have some of the worst visual effects I've ever seen in the movie this year so far? How is that even possible? And as Soren mentioned before, the movie pulls a sequel bait indicating that we're gonna get like more we're gonna get more of these movies. Yeah, nice try. But judging the fact that it didn't even make its budget back, I highly doubt it's not likely that'll even happen. And it also goes for those cliches that we've seen in other, not just in other Roland Emmerich movies before, but in as well as disaster movies before, but in other sci-fi films and films in general. Yeah, and yeah, Michael, and I didn't like Geostorm. But I would rather watch that than sit through this piece of shit again. Overall, words can't even begin to describe how much I absolutely detested every single minute of Moonfart. Moonfall is one of Roland Emmerich's very worst movies, since this is one of the ugliest and most reprehensible and idiotic disaster films I've ever seen in my entire life, and that is why it is my number 4 worst movie I've seen this year so far. Fuck this movie.
You know, DC's been crying a role recently. I mean, first we got Shazam and Joker, then we got the Snyder Cut and James Gunn's Suicide Squad, and now Matt Reeves has given us his vision of the Batman.
I have to say number 4.
Alright. While I prefer films like The Dark Knight and Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition in terms of Batman films, this one is just as great as those. It combines the look and feel of the Arkham games with the drama and detective work of the animated series. The direction is beyond stellar, the production values are top-notch, and the performances are great from Paul Dano, who better get award consideration as a Riddler, Joey Kravitz, who I didn't know this until recently. She actually reprises her role as Catwoman from the Lego Batman movie. And of course, Robert Pattinson is the latest actor to subvert expectations as a Kate Crusader. Really can't wait for the sequel. Number 4 is The Batman.
I actually did not know about that with Zoe Kravitz's character until now, but damn. Um um yeah, this movie kicked ass. Not only do I think it's one of the best Batman film movies to date, but it's also one of the most exhilarating films I've seen this year so far. This is one of those movies where after I saw it, I immediately wanted to watch it again because just how exhilarating the whole thing was. The story had me emotionally invested throughout because of how well executed and exhilarating it felt. The script, the script was absolutely fantastic due to my two big praises I have with it. Other than the script having excellent dialogue, the first being that the script did an incredible job with the way to develop the characters throughout the whole film. And last but not least, my second biggest praise I have with the script is how it carefully shifts the tone of the film with with not only being a superhero film, but also being a crime drama movie as well. That is very that's how you do that's how you balance the tone right with this one. That's how you should balance the tone. The Matt Reeves, he did an incredible job with the way he directed this movie. The passion he had for the film is there, and the way he directed the actors in the film is just nothing short of just amazing. And speaking of the acting, it's incredible. Robert Pattinson, this is one of I'm Robert Pattinson. I'm sorry. Robert Pattinson absolutely gives out one of his very best performances as the Batman, since the way he acts like Batman in the film is nothing short of just brilliant. This is another reason why I feel that Robert Pattinson is one of my favorite actors working today. And I know what you're going to tell me. Oh, he was in those Twilight films. That was not his fault. Okay,
And
can
plus,
we drop that?
he's been given great performances like Harry Potter and The Lighthouse and Good Time and Tenet. When are these people gonna stop judging him because of Twilight?
Seriously, seriously. If you need proof that Robert Pattinson is a great actor, watch this and The Lighthouse. I was also very surprised. I was also very surprised with how terrific Zoe Kravitz was as Catwoman. Her performance was absolutely terrific because of how much sensuality she gave to the character, and because of that, the chemistry between Kravitz and Pattinson worked so well in this one. Paul Dano, Paul Dano was absolutely menacing yet powerful in this movie as the Riddler. I mean, what a performance! What a performance! And also, what a performance from Colin Farrell as well as the Penguin. Not only is he unrecognizable due to how incredible the makeup was on Farrell, but what I loved about Colin Farrell's performance is how he gave that Marlon Brando from The Godfather like voice to the main character to the point where I couldn't help but get um, Godfather vibes as I watched the whole thing. Not to mention Jeffrey Wright, John Turturro, Peter Sarsgaard, and Andy Serkis all give out such terrific performances in the film as well. Michael Giacchino's musical score is by far one of the most exhilarating musical scores I've heard in the movie this entire year. Greg Fraser's cinematography was absolutely terrific. The editing was excellent. It's a very well paced. It's also very well paced throughout. Yes, it is a 3 hour. It is almost 3 hours film. It is almost 3 hours long, but that didn't bother me that much due to how much I was emotionally invested in the story. What also impressed me about this movie was how they used some of the practical effects in some shots as well. And not only with the costume design, art direction, and visual effects absolutely of the film absolutely spectacular, but the action sequences is in this movie are one of the best I've ever seen put to film due to how brutal Exhilarating, well choreographed, well shot, and well edited, the action sequences were in the film. Overall, The Batman is one of the very best Batman movies I've seen to date, and absolutely one of the most exhilarating films I've seen this entire year so far. And that's why The Batman is easily Soren and I's number 4 favorite movie that we both saw this year so far.
Well, I pretty much mentioned my number three words, which is move forward. So you go ahead, Nick.
All right. Oh boy, number 3 on the list. Oh boy. I talked about how bad this one was, so my number 3 worst film of the year isn't just one of the worst remakes I've ever seen in my entire life. It's also one of the worst horror films I've ever seen in my life too. Number 3 is Firestarter.
And to think that after John Carpenter was fired from the original, this version is the one under his resume.
And you know what the sad thing is? The musical score was by far the best thing in the film. But the problem is, I would rather hear that in a better movie than this. And I agree, Soren, that about Kristen Stewart. She should have won for Spencer.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I was saying, I already explained what was wrong with this movie, so I'll just go ahead and make it quick. I'll just go ahead and make it quick. It suffers through a horrendous script since like it's no wonder why this is from the writer of like one of the writers. It's no wonder that one of the writers of Halloween Kills delivers one of the year's very worst scripts since the dialogue was clunky and horrendous to the point where it doesn't eat where it doesn't even leave you to believing that a real human being would even say that nonsense in real life. But the characters feel paper thin and one dimensional. You don't get two shits about them, and the tone feels inconsistent throughout. Like it clearly has no idea what it wants to be. Like at one point it wants to be a horror film, then at other times it wants to be a drama movie, a sci-fi movie, and bafflingly an action movie. Unfortunately, it falls very flat as a result. As a and a, and as a and because of that, you're just scratching your head in confusion while also asking, "What are you even trying to be, movie?" Now, I don't mind if a movie tries to fit two genres into one film as long as it's carefully balanced. But when you have a movie that can't even decide what genre it wants to be, then it becomes a frustrating experience as a result of this. And Firestarter is easily one of the worst examples of a movie having such an inconsistent tone and not deciding what it wanted to be. Plus, the acting is absolutely atrocious. I feel sorry for Ryan Kira Armstrong. She was the only actress in the film that tried to give out a decent performance as Charlie, but my God, what a waste of her talent. And I really like Zach Efron, but wow, is he bad in this film? His acting in the film was absolutely shallow, since unlike David Keith in the '84 version of Firestarter, he brought no personality or charm to the father character, Andy McGee. Gloria Rubin was up, and not to mention Gloria Rubin and Michael Greyes are also terrible in this movie too. And not only is the story a muddled mess and full of cliches that we've seen in other movies before, and not only is the directing, editing, cinematography, and pacing, as well as the visual effects, look horrendous, but the ending is one of the worst I've ever seen in a movie this year so far. Like, how in the world does she end up with John Rainbird at the end of the film?
I hope the alternate ending's better.
I highly doubt it, but just I don't remember. I highly doubt it, but hopefully, it's just I don't even remember the book as well as like the original film like having that ending, and it's made even worse when you realize that the director of the film wants to do like sequels, spin-offs, and prequels to this film. Yeah, nice try. But judging by the fact that even despite making its budget back, it still needed to double like its but it still needed to like double its budget to like become a success in order for it to gain a sequel. So nice try, but that's not gonna happen. Yeah, say what you want about the 1984 film, but at least but at least it tried to stay faithful to the novel that the flick was based on, and at least it was a fun film to watch, even despite how corny and flawed it was. With this remake, though, it felt like they didn't even try at all. Firestarter isn't just one of the worst remakes I've ever seen in my life. It's also one of the worst horror movies I've seen in general too, since it had no idea what it wanted to be, and as a result, it's one of the most boring, idiotic, and reprehensible movies I've seen this year so far. This movie is an absolute disgrace, and it can go fuck itself to hell. That's why it is number 3 on my worst of list. Fuck this movie.
My number 3 best, Robert Eggers is now 3-3 with The Northman.
Which is my number 2 best.
This is the kind of historical epic we don't get anymore. It gets us a tales all its time and puts the director's own spin to it with the music, production values, the cinematography. Also, the performances are all stellar, from Alexander Skarsgård to Anna Taylor-Joy, and the battle sequences are something to behold, especially the end fight on the volcano. I can't wait to
awesome.
I can't wait to see Eggers' next movie, and that's why The Northman is my number 3.
All right, so Soren's number 3 is my number 2, which I'll gladly jump into right away. Yeah, the Northman is this might be my favorite movie that Robert Eggers has done, and I love The Witch and the Lighthouse, but this gave me something that I never thought I would see before. A Viking epic that is one of the most powerful, gripping, haunting, mesmerizing, and exhilarating films I've seen this year so far. This is the kind of epic movie magic we don't see a lot of anymore, and that's why this one is so special to me. The story was fantastic. The story was fantastic and exhilarating. The script written by Robert Eggers and Jan was absolutely fantastic too, due to it having excellent character development and dialogue. And the way Robert Eggers directs this movie was absolutely incredible. Not only do you see the vision and passion he tries to go for with this, but the way he directs the actors as well, as well as some of the battle sequences, which I'll talk about in a bit in the film, is just nothing short of just spectacular. Not to mention that this movie has one of the most this is one of the most well acted movies I've seen this year so far, since the acting in this one is absolutely terrific. Alexander Skarsgård absolutely delivers one of the best and most powerful performances I've seen this year so far as Amleth. Nicole Kidman also gives out one of her very best performances as Amleth's mother, Queen Gudrun. The way she performs her character in the film is absolutely spectacular. Not to mention that Anya Taylor-Joy, Claes Bang, Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, and Bjork, although like three of them are not in the film that much, also deliver some terrific performances in the film as well. The musical score is one of the most haunting, powerful, and beautiful musical scores I've heard in the movie this year so far. How these guys were able to compose the score to make you feel like you're back in the Viking era, especially with the powerful drum beats, it's just nothing short of just masterful. It also has my favorite cinematography of the year so far. This is seriously one of the most beautiful and masterfully shot movies I have seen this entire year so far. Since how they were able to use the color palettes for the cinematography, it's just spectacular. The editing was absolutely terrific. and one of the best I've seen in a motion picture this entire year so far. The pacing was also terrific. Yes, it's slow burn, but it needed to be that way to fit the tone and atmosphere of the film. And not only did the film have some of the best production values and costume design I've seen put to film this entire year so far, since it feels like you're back in that time, but the battle sequences, wow. I mean, wow. If there was one word to describe the battle sequences in the film, brutal. How they were able to how they were able to how the battle sequences were shot, edited, and directed and choreographed. Whoa. It had me on the edge of my seat throughout. If you've seen if you've seen other action sequences that are brutal, that are this brutal, you haven't seen nothing yet with the Northman, I'll tell you. Yes, and it is a strategic, epic film, which is why there's not a lot of action sequences in it. But when there is, like I said before, it is brutal yet incredible. I had no issues with the film whatsoever. Between this, the Northman, between this and the Lighthouse, as well as the Witch, Robert Eggers is now 3 for 3 with this one. He's not just because the Northman isn't just my favorite Robert Eggers movie that he's done so far, that he has made so far, but it's also one of the most epic, well acted, powerful, gripping, haunting, mesmerizing, and exhilarating films I've seen this entire year so far. And this is why it's definitely number 2 on the list. And Soren's number 3 best on the list, too. And as for my number 3 best, Soren had this on his list, had this at number 5. His number 5 is my number 3, and it is Top Gun Maverick.
Once again, Jurassic World, take notes.
Seriously, this is how you do a legacy sequel. Have continue the story well and keep the audiences invested while also respecting the characters, whether they're old or new. And trust me, I'll get to that film in a little bit. Not only is Top Gun Maverick one of the best sequels I've ever seen, since this is one of those rare sequels where it managed to be even better than the first film, but I would argue it's one of the best and most exhilarating action movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And this is also proves what blockbuster movies should be about. They should not only be fun and entertaining, but also moving and exhilarating. And Top Gun Maverick definitely succeeds at being those things in the best way possible. Not only did I love the story, the script, the directing, but the acting was absolutely phenomenal, too. Tom Cruise reprising his role as Maverick gives out one of his best performances ever. The way he brought the energy and charisma to his character is one of the biggest reasons why his performance was absolutely spectacular. Miles Teller from Whiplash, who you may remember from Whiplash, also gives out one of the best supporting performances I've seen this year so far as Rooster. Not to mention Jennifer Connelly, John Hamm, Glenn Powell, and Louis Pullman are also fantastic in this movie as well. And the chemistry that Tom Cruise and Jennifer Connelly had was absolutely terrific. You buy their chemistry because of how fleshed out and well developed the characters were in the film. And you can see where both of them are coming from with this. The soundtrack is one of the best I've heard in the film this year so far. The cinematography was fantastic. The editing was terrific. The pacing's great. I was also very impressed with some sprinkles of humor that the movie adds into the mix. And not only does it deliver one of the most moving endings I've seen in the movie this entire year so far, but my biggest praise with the film easily goes to the aerial flight sequences. Oh my goodness. I'm still blown away at like how they did those sequences. Especially with the way they were like shot, edited, and directed. Like, that is incredible right there. And the fact they use real like aerial planes for those sequences alone is why is one of the biggest reasons why the flight sequences in the movie are absolutely spectacular. I mean, this is one of those movies you need to see on the big screen. See it on the biggest screen possible because you are in for a treat with this one, with how they shot the flight sequences. If you have not seen Top Gun Maverick, please do so right away. Top Gun Maverick is one of the best and most exhilarating and moving action films I've seen in a very long time. And without a doubt, Top Gun Maverick is my number 3 best film of 2022 so far.
My number 2 was Nick mentioned in his number 9. It's a 355. He already explained everything, but I'll just say this: Simon Kinberg, you went from writing films like Sherlock Holmes, First Class, and The Martian to directing Dark Phoenix, and now this. Just why? So yeah, it was not a good way to start this year, and it is my number 2 worst.
All right. All right. Excuse me for a second. My number 2 worst. Soren mentioned this movie, and Soren mentioned this movie on his number 7 worst. Oh come on! You guys already know what it is. It's Jurassic World Defecation.
That's one big pile of shit right there.
Yeah, really. Oh my god. Seriously, not only does the movie suffer through the same problem as Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, where it doesn't even feel like a finale at all, but for a movie that's concluding the Jurassic movie saga, it doesn't even feel like a Jurassic Park movie at all. And I'll get to why in a bit, but I will say this: DeWanda Wise really tries her best in the film. She is very good in the film, but her character, but her character being underwritten was the reason why her talent is just horribly wasted. I don't know where to start with this abomination. Well, first of all, the story is all over the place due to the film cramming in too many subplots, including oh my god, this one subplot which I'll talk about in a little bit, the locust subplot. And second, the script is one of the worst of the year due to it being messy, due to it having messy character development, very clunky dialogue, and an inconsistent tone. Not to mention that Colin Trevorrow's directing was all over the place. The rest of the acting, while not terrible, was not good. I was very disappointed with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard's performances as Owen Grady and Claire Deering, respectively, in the film. Since not only did they look absolutely bored being there, but it also felt like they didn't fit the personality to their characters whatsoever. And because of that, there's no chemistry between them whatsoever, even despite how much the movie tries to manipulate you into believing that they're actually a couple to this oh my god, to this robotic clone child Maisie. Nice try, movie. I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that at all. It also wastes the talents of Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, DeWanda Wise, B.D. Wong, Omar Sy, and Isabel Sermon in the film due to how poorly written the characters are. But the worst performance in the film easily goes to Campbell Scott as the main villain. Like, dear Lord, if you thought the first two Jurassic World movies had awful villains like Vincent D'Onofrio and Ray Spell and Toby Jones's villains, I I can't even believe I have to explain this again on this podcast, but it needs to be said and done. If you thought they were really bad in the film, if you thought their villains were like annoying one dimensional cartoon villains, sorry, Rainwright. Campbell Scott's character Dr. Lewis Dodgson is even worse because of how one dimensional and just cartoonish he is to the point where it's hard to even take his character seriously. He is without a doubt not only the worst Jurassic World villain I've ever seen, but the worst Jurassic Park villain ever. Like, oh my god. How is it that a shaving cream guy character all of a sudden gets to be the villain? Like the Steve Jobs like villain. Like, oh my god, this fucking movie! Michael Giacchino. I was also very disappointed in Michael Giacchino's musical score since it's nothing but a scrambled mess of noisy chaos. Not to mention that the film is too long. This movie's 146 minutes. I don't mind long movies as long as they keep me invested in the story, but the film is just way too long because of how much I was not emotionally invested in the characters. And I really wish they would have trimmed like 25 minutes of it down. I mean, there's a difference between being bigger and better and then dragging out for way too long. And because of its excessive runtime, Jurassic World Dominion sadly definitely falls into the latter of that category. And as a result, the movie's pacing is all over the place as well. I mean, you had the opportunity for the visual effects to make the dinosaurs look cool. How is it that you made the dinosaurs look this boring? How? The action sequences are absolutely abysmal. And not only did the movie go for those cliches that we've seen in other films before, but because of how I mentioned that, okay, I'm gonna explain this again. Let me rephrase that. Not only does the movie throw in those cliches that we've seen in other films before, but there are two glaring issues I have with this movie. Number one, the action sequences. Every single action sequence in the movie is terrible due to it not only having one of the worst edited movies I've seen this year, which since they rely too much on jump cuts, but this also has one of the worst cinematographies I've ever seen in a movie this year so far, due to it relying too much on safety cam throughout. It was at a point where you can't even tell what the hell was even going on in those sequences. And the second and final glaring issue I have with the film is that, remember when I said earlier in the film that the film didn't feel like Jurassic Park at all? Well, that's because of this question I have. How in the hell did the subplots involving Maisie and Locust almost take up much of the film's running time, and yet the dinosaurs barely get any screen time whatsoever. And on top of that, how do you make them this boring as hell? How? Why, thank you, Jose. Oh my goodness. And yeah, she feels no remorse. And yeah, Maisie feels no remorse for what she did. Even after she like freed the dinosaurs in Fallen Kingdom. What the fuck?
Even though hundreds, if not millions, of people are dying because of her.
Yeah, really. That ignorant little shit. I would be lying if I didn't say that Maisie is almost on the same level as Evan Hansen. Almost.
I say she's worse because at least Evan Hansen didn't kill anyone.
You know what? Yeah. Yeah, she's worse. Yeah. I had to. They're alive. Like me. Screw off! Fuck off, bitch! After this movie, I am fed up with the Jurassic World movies. Jurassic World Defecation was nothing but a colossal train wreck and one of the dumbest and most boring and reprehensible movies I've seen this year. I have seen this entire year so far. And I'll be honest, I really wanted to put this at number one because of how much it destroyed everything I love about the 1993 masterpiece directed by Steven Spielberg. But as much as I hated that film, there was one movie that was even worse than Jurassic World Defecation. I think you all already know what it is. So Jurassic World Defecation, you may not be number one. You may not be the number one worst film I've seen this year. But you are still an honorary number one in my book. And as Yoda from Star Wars once said, there is another.
My number two best. I waited the longest.
Yeah, and that's why Jurassic World Defecation is my number two worst film of the year. Fuck this movie.
As for my number two best, I waited the longest time for this movie to come online, and it was worth every second of it. My number two is Brian and Charles. Imagine if, like, Wallace and Gromit was a live-action film made by an independent studio. Like a certain movie I'm going to be seeing tomorrow and reviewing in the next podcast. This movie takes advantage of its mockumentary style of filmmaking and really lets you dive into Brian's character as he tries to make stuff to better the world, while also making friends with one of his creations. It's funny, it's heartfelt, and if you don't feel something at the end, chances are you need a pacemaker. So number two is the biggest hidden gem of the year so far, Brian and Charles.
All right.
You know, after we saw and dissected our number one work,
And I already talked about the Northman and why it's my number two best. So let's just continue. Let's just continue what you had to say with the number one.
funny thing is, after we saw and dissected our number one worst, it's become quite the meme on Twitter, making it kind of the room of a new generation. It's gotten a 200% on Rotten Tomatoes. It topped Wikipedia's highest grossing films with either $352 trillion or more billion dollars, and has spawned one of the greatest quotes in cinematic history. And you probably know what it is. Our number one worst film of the year. It's Morbin time. But in all seriousness,
Fuck this movie.
Morbius is just a humongous train wreck.
It is.
From the very idea of making a cinematic universe centered around turning Spider-Man villains into good guys, to the boring characters, from the acting which ranges from okay to straight up cartoonish, to the effects that look something out of an Instagram filter, to the obnoxious action sequences, to the
Yeah,
sloppy
right.
editing and pacing, to even the end credit, to even the nonsense end credit scene that just raised more questions than just answered. It's is there any wonder why it seems like Sony isn't trying anymore?
Oh, the pain!
And after hearing that they're gonna make a Craven the Hunter movie without even making it a Hunter, as well as a Madam Web movie made by the writers of Gods of Egypt, why do they even bother anymore?
Yeah,
Just give the
right.
rights to Disney already, and just pretend the only future Spy projects coming out are the Spy-Verse sequels and the Disney Plus cartoon. Oh, and one more thing, Sony. How did that re-release go again?
Yeah, really. Yeah,
So
really.
yeah,
2 words. Epic fail.
putting the memes aside, number one is Morbius.
And I have the same number one as he does. Yeah, yeah, there was no contest. When it came to choosing the number one worst film I've seen this year so far, there was no contest. Morbius is absolutely one of the worst comic movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's also one of the ugliest and most reprehensible movies I've ever seen in my entire life as well. This is one of those movies where it not only makes you question how this piece of shit even got made in the first place, but it also leaves you baffled and flabbergasted at what the hell you've just witnessed. And before you ask, no, there are no redeeming things in this film whatsoever. None. Now let's get to reasons why this movie sucks. Number one, the script was both messy and horrendous. It shouldn't come as no surprise that this was from the same jackasses that brought us Gods of Egypt. But good lord, could the script of the film get any more messy and idiotic? The script is just the absolute worst of the year so far. And that's due to three glaring issues I have with it. The first being that the character development feels non existent, since all the characters in this movie felt one dimensional and shallow. The second is that this movie has some of the worst dialogue I've ever heard in a movie this entire year so far. The dialogue is so clunky and horrendous that you swear you felt like you were watching a Saturday morning cartoon rather than a theatrical comic book movie. I still can't get over that dialogue. That still makes me cringe to this day. That pretty little stinky pinky. I'm done. I'm done. Goodbye. Yeah, but
And don't get me started about the and don't get me started on Maximus' dance scene.
don't even get me started on that either. Oh. Oh my god. Oh my god. That still makes me cringe to this day. And you know what? Okay. And the third and final problem on I have with the script and why it's the worst of the year so far is that it's because of how this movie is so obsessed with characters shoving endless exposition down our throats. Down our throats. That type of filmmaking and writing really pisses me off because then you're treating your audiences like they're a bunch of idiots by shoving such nonsensical exposition down their throats like they're not going to get it. The acting is some of the worst I've seen this year. I've seen this year so far. Jared Leto. Jared Leto. What the hell are you doing? I mean, it was bad enough you played that Mario on crack performance in House of Gucci. Yet you just made your performance in that film as well as your Joker performance look more Oscar worthy in comparison to your shitty performance. What were you thinking? And I know some people say that Matt Smith was the best thing in the film, but I'm sorry. He was absolutely awful in this movie. His performance as Milo Morbius was nothing but a shallow and overacting mess. And it doesn't help that Tyrese Gibson, Harris, and Al Magical are also horribly wasted in this movie too. And not to mention, this movie has officially dethroned Roland Emmerich's moon fart as having the worst visual effects I've seen in a movie this year so far. Not only do the visual effects in this movie look absolutely sloppy, since they look like something that came out of an outdated PlayStation 2 game, but even when you see the CGI faces on both Jared Leto and Matt Smith's characters, they looked laughably horrendous due to how sloppy and uncanny they looked. How this movie cost 75 to 83 million to make, and yet the visual effects in this movie looked laughably horrendous is beyond me. Not to mention that the action sequences are some of the worst I've ever experienced in a movie this year so far. It's not just because of how terribly choreographed and how horrendous the visual effects were, as I explained just now, but it's also due to the film cinematography. I'm going to do this again. Due to the film cinematography being nothing but a shaky mess throughout. And the editing being an absolute joke. And just all over the place, to the point where you can't even tell what the hell is even going on. And other than the film story being all over the place, as well as the directing being a clumsy mess, and the movie having some of the worst pacing I've ever seen in a movie this year so far, since for a movie that felt like 104 minutes, it felt like it was going on for 3 hours long. And the film throwing in so many cliches that we've seen in other films before. This movie has the worst ending I've seen in a movie this year so far, and the worst mid-credit scene I've ever seen in a movie. This mid-credit scene really pissed me off because not only did it not make any sense for Adrian Toomes or Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, to be free from prison and have him and Morbius team up after Toomes is transported into Morbius's universe. But what's worse about the insulting mid-credit scene is that this is a huge slap in the face to not only the audience's intelligence, but to fans of Spider-Man as well.
And not to mention, reportedly, when Kevin Feige gave Sony permission to start this universe, he advised that Sony not copy him with his mid-credit scenes. That's what happened.
They copied it, and guess what? It is absolute shit. This movie is just an absolute shit fest. Even with the memes, it doesn't help. It doesn't help that Morbius is just unwatchable. This movie was just an unwatchable experience from start to finish. There was a reason why me and Soren chose this as the number one worst film we've seen this year so far, because of how much it derailed. Because of how much Sony just like derailed Spider-Man altogether. And hello, Anna and Eddie. Welcome to the podcast. Yeah, overall, do not see Morbius. It makes the first two Venom movies look like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 and 2. And it's not just one of the worst comic book movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It is easily one of the ugliest and most reprehensible movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Like I said before, do not watch Morbius. It is not worth your time whatsoever. And I would be lying if I didn't say that this ranks up there with Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and Catwoman as being one of the very worst comic book movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And that is why Fuck BS is Soren and I's number one worst movie that we both saw this year so far. Fuck this movie. Fuck this movie. Fuck the writers of Gods of Egypt for like writing this piece of shit. Fuck Sony. Fuck Sony and just fuck this movie in general. Fuck this movie.
As for our number one best, for a film to be number one, it's gotta have a few qualities to meet. It's gotta be the most unique experience, the most technically perfect film, and or the movie that stuck in our heads the most. And so far, no other movie met those qualities like this one. Our number one best film of the year so far is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now, imagine Doctor Strange 2 if it actually took full advantage of its premise, and boy did the Daniels take advantage of it. Everything from the story, the characters, the effects, the fights, the music, the cinematography, the editing, the production values, the characters, the effects, the humor, the story. I can't think of a single downside to this movie.
Me neither.
And I doubt anything this year will top it for me because this is what movies are made for, giving us a hell of an experience. I don't have anything to say about it except, pun absolutely intended, this movie totally rocks.
It does.
So, my number one of 2022 so far is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
This is definitely a deadlock in my top five, if not top three, at the end of the year because movies like this are why I love movies so much. And to answer your question, Eddie, yes, I hate Morbius more than Batman and Robin.
Same. At least Batman and Robin, I can laugh at it.
Same here. Anyway, this is why I love this movie so much. This is why I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once so much. From its acting to its especially from Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis, who give out some of the best performances of their career so far, to the story, to the directing, to the writing, to the editing, to the music, to the cinematography, to the production design, the art direction, the visual effects, and to its like humor and its ending. Absolutely perfection. Absolutely perfection to the 11th degree. I loved the director's last movie, Swiss Army Man, but boy did this really like brought their A game to a whole new level, and it definitely shows with this one. This is the thing that movies are this is the type of stuff that movies are made of, and why we love going to the movies so much, and why we love movies in general. So when you get movies like this that are really original, that are not only original but emotionally impactful to almost every person that saw it, you know you have my number one favorite movie of the year in my book. This movie is an absolute masterpiece, and if you have not seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, what are you doing? Go stop watching this podcast or whatever you're doing and go watch this movie, please. Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of the best movies that Soren and I have seen this decade so far, and without a doubt, it is easily our number one film that both he and I saw this year so far. What a movie! And to the Daniels, Michelle Yeoh, Jamie Lee Curtis, the actor that played short round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and to A24 and to everybody involved with the film, thank you very much for giving us this wonderful masterpiece. Thank you. That's why it's our number one. All right. Well, we're done. We're done. With today's podcast.
All right. Tune in next month as we start going through the July releases, as well as listing off our favorite and least favorite episodes of My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic.
Yeah, and if you're and we will and starting at the beginning of September, we will list off our worst and best movies that both Soren and I did see this summer. So be on the lookout for that because that's coming in September. But thank you guys very much for watching today's podcast. It was a lot of fun doing this. I certainly enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe to Soren the FilmBrony on his YouTube channel. And give sorry. Be sure to subscribe to Soren the FilmBrony on his YouTube channel. He is like a really great dude who makes some really good content. Give him the love he absolutely deserves. And same thing with Christian Freyhe's YouTube channel. Give him also the love he deserves too. I'll put the links in the description below after the show. And until we meet again in August for all the stuff he just mentioned, you guys have a nice day, and you guys have a nice rest of the weekend. Have a great rest of the summer, and until we see you again in August, have a good one. Bye bye.